everybody, and welcome to this episode of Boss Level. My name is Chris Melissinos, and I'm the principal evangelist for the video game industry here at AWS. And I'm thrilled to be joined here today with our guest, Gena Gizzi, a Senior Solutions Architect at AWS, Olivia Liddell, Solutions Architect at AWS, and my longtime friend and awesome industry colleague, Careen Yapp, who is the Chief Strategic Partnerships Officer at Embracer Group. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about the journeys that Olivia, Gena, and Careen have had as they have developed their careers in the tech industry. And we hope that hearing their stories can help inspire our audience to open up additional doors for women who are interested in pursuing technical careers. But before we jump in, we'll talk a little bit about what we've been playing. Now, look, when we talk about the games we want to play, and this is what I love about the games industry, we're all nerds for something. And I always believe that somebody who plays Candy Crush 20 hours a week is the same type of person who will play Call of Duty 20 hours a week, right? It's just with games, we have all this art, all this interaction, all these wonderful ways to express gaming and fandom and community. And so, yeah, games run that whole gamut. For me, I'll start and jump in by saying, I'm not playing so many new games. I'm still going back and playing a lot of older retro games right now, right? It's something I can go back to. It's comfort food. Although I will say, I'm playing a ton of Power Wash Simulator. I don't know if you all have ever seen that, but you literally power wash objects in this 3D world, and you get points based on how much time you've done. And it's wonderful to sit and like binge watch something like Yellowstone, which we've been going through right now, while I'm power washing a fire truck or power washing, an old farm building. So it's totally ridiculous and absolutely amazing, incredible. So yeah, that's what I've been playing right now. Gena, how about you? What have you been playing?
Yeah. That just goes to show, Chris, that it doesn't matter what games you play. If you play anything, you are a gamer, even if you spend your time power washing objects.
That's right.
I'm still in the Minecraft grind. That's just one of my favorite games. I love how creative it is, and I love like the adventure and exploring. And also, I've been really into collecting Pokemon cards lately. It's really nostalgic from my childhood, which I know isn't a game, but I love the Pokemon franchise. So
yeah, but it is a game when you're trying to collect the cards that you don't have and trying to figure out how you game a system to go and get access to it. Game theory, game process, game frameworks for everything that we do. Yeah. So no, it is a game. Absolutely. Awesome. Olivia, how about you?
Yeah, but for me, when I think about the games I've most recently played and enjoyed, I actually very recently, a few weeks ago, went on vacation to Edinburgh, Scotland, and I visited the National Museum of Scotland, where they currently have an exhibit called, I believe it's called Game On, and it's about the history of video games. So they have all these different consoles and arcade games there that you can just hop from one to the other and play. So it was just really cool to be able to play some of my favorite Street Fighter games. I think they had Tekken there as well. And just some of the consoles that I grew up with, like Sega Saturn, Sega CD, that I haven't thought about in years. But to see them there was really cool. So for anyone who's watching us, and if you have a chance to stop by the National Museum of Scotland, I highly recommend it.
And I love the fact you mentioned the Sega Saturn, one of my favorite machines, the ill-fated, totally misunderstood, child of the Sega family. Yes. Yeah, those are all awesome. And our special guest, Careen, what are you playing?
Well, it's been a crazy couple of years, not only with what I had recently left Stadia before I came to Embracer. So there's been a lot going on both personally and professionally. So I don't have a lot of extra time to play games. So to be honest, at the end of the day, when I'm completely exhausted and I have a few minutes, I'm playing Scrabble online against my mom. And by the way, Scopely, I love you, but I do not want to give you all my contacts. I do not want to join via social media. I don't mind watching your ads. Please make it easier, because all I want to do is play Scrabble with my mom, because I don't have enough time to call her on the phone. So that's a way for us to keep in touch. So sorry, I wish I could say that I made it all the way through Baldur's Gate 3. I did not. But eventually I will.
And I love the fact that when we talk about, again, what video games are and what they can do, right? They are able to bring us closer together to the people that we care about and do it in a way that is familiar, that's accessible. And it's really just about the joy of play. And people forget, Scrabble or Words with Friends was like Words with Friends. I mean, they made episodes of sitcoms about people playing Words with Friends, right? It was this monumental thing where imagine that you can now play with anybody in the world online on any device you have at your disposal. That is what is absolutely critical and crucial about video games in our world today. And look, I suspect in the work that you do, you're spending so much time enabling more games to be made and more awesome content and art to come out to the world. So, yeah, I mean.
Well, also, I just wanted to jump in and say that I feel like sometimes there's this misconception that if you work in the games industry, you have to be a hardcore gamer, right? And that's not necessarily true. I know a lot of people in general, awesome women, but also just like people who like love working in the games industry. They love the type of work that they do and they love working with like these types of customers, but like they don't go home and play, Minecraft or League of Legends or, Call of Duty for hours. They don't play games at all, but they find passion in their work. So it's definitely not a requirement and we shouldn't gatekeep that either. So
100% agreed. 100% agreed. Well, with that, let's talk about the industry. And I really want to hear, and look, for me, my role here is to kind of prompt the conversation as we go forward. Isn't that a terrible AI phrase? We're going to prompt the conversation going forward. This is really about your experiences. We can't wait to hear about your journey in games, the type of work that you do today, and what we can do to make, again, the games industry more inviting to more women, open it up to, and as I always say, video games are an art form for all, and it can't be an art for all unless all voices are represented. So this is a really important conversation to have, one that I'm really looking forward to sitting back and taking in. So with that, why don't we talk about each of your journeys into games? So one of the challenges that women often face is kind of getting the courage to transition into those technical roles or into space that may have an opportunity to enter, it may not have been clear. Can you talk a bit about each of your experiences of how you got into games and into the space? So why don't we start with our guest of honor here, Careen?
So I started in the industry in 1999 at a company called THQ. And I had worked in a prior life at a company that rented broadcast equipment. And so it was in the entertainment field, but it wasn't in games. It was in TV. And I had it was a small company, so I had 3 different resumes floating around. And I was lucky enough to land a job at THQ as an entry level role. When Brian Farrell hired me, he said, "Okay, I know a couple things about you. Is there one more thing I need to know before I hire you?" I said, "Yes, I'm not going to be doing this in 2 years." So I got my foot in the door. And then after I got that kind of job organized, maybe 2 weeks, it was very easy. Then I started going around the company and trying to figure out, okay, what else can I do? What is everybody else doing? And found out very quickly, finance is not for me. Those guys are amazing, but spreadsheets, maybe not. And I ended up lucky enough to start helping a woman. Her name is Jermaine Joya. She's one of the legends of our industry. She was working in licensing. And so I kind of started helping her and then started forced my way into her team. Started doing whatever thing that she needed done, started drafting term sheets, which then resulted in the legal counsel asking me to start drafting different things like joint venture term sheets. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try that. But that's how I started. It was an entry-level position, got my foot in the door, and then kind of just looked around to see what really piqued my interest.
Awesome. And it's any foot in the door. And I tell this, to kids, right, that are kind of entering this space, say what should I do? This is the perfect job I want. It's don't think about as much the job that you want. Think about the job you need to get your foot in the door so you get to do what you want, right? It is equally about that, right? And that applies to everybody, right? In any field, actually. So awesome way in too. Olivia, how about you? How was your journey into tech and specifically here at AWS?
Yeah, so for me, I come from a background that's mainly rooted in education, educational technology, things in that realm, technical training. And I always wanted to have some kind of career in tech, but going all the way back to when I was an undergrad, my very first semester of college, I was a biomedical engineering pre-med major. And then my first semester, I proceeded to fail calculus and then run screaming away from anything related to technology. And that really stuck with me for a long time. It made me feel like a failure that I could never do anything in tech, even though over those years, I was always still doing technical things. Like when I was in college, whenever there's a student club that I joined, I was the webmaster for that. When I was a teacher in Chicago public schools, and I saw there's a need for my fellow teachers to have classroom websites, I was the one who led the professional development training on that. And so I got to a point where I was a technical trainer and realized that I wasn't being challenged enough. I wanted to do something that was involving more complex technologies, and started working here at AWS and almost 5 years ago now. So November of 2019 was when I started here. I was a technical curriculum developer in AWS training and certification. And for anyone who's watching this, if you've ever taken the AWS Cloud Practitioner Essentials course, that was the course that I was the lead developer on. And I put a few little Easter eggs in there. That's fun as well. Yeah. And it was good. The course is very well received, but I, over the next couple of years, became stuck. And I was really just maintaining that course and working on a few others here and there, but I wasn't being challenged. So I reached out to my manager and I said, hey, I really need something else to work on. I want something that's going to be more of a challenge for me. So there are two things that were happening in parallel here. One was that I was having that conversation with my manager, and she got me involved with helping to develop a course called Getting Started with AWS Game Tech. And then also at the same time, I had decided that I wanted to pursue a role of becoming a solutions architect, because I realized that in curriculum development, I wasn't having the type of impact that I wanted to have on working with customers and having being able to help them solve problems for a number of different use cases. So I went through an internal program that we have here at AWS called Reskill, which is for Amazonians who want to pursue a solutions architect career path. And long story short, at the same time that I was finishing up that game tech course, I was finishing up the Reskill program, saw an opening on the games team in solutions architecture, and reached out. And now I'm here, and I've been on this team for I can't do math in my head, since March of 2022. So a little over 2 years now. And so my takeaway here, before I pass it over back to you, Chris, and then to Gena, is it really pays to speak up when you feel that you're not being challenged, and when you feel that you're being stuck and that you're not working on the types of problems that you want to solve, because that really is one of the best ways to get some doors open for you.
That's an awesome story. And it really goes to the point of there are no straight lines in life, right? And, having kids in college and stuff like that, and getting out of college, it's like, oh no, I went in thinking I wanted to go in this direction, but then it turned out I was really good at doing this. So I shifted, there's no plan, no straight lines. Find what you love, find the people around you to help you, make your way into it, get in there, do the job, and continue to learn, shift, right, pivot, and continue to build awesome stuff. So that's awesome. And I'm glad that I didn't I have almost the exact same blue glasses. And then if I'd worn them today, people would be like, oh, so apparently there's some sort of hidden, a uniform that we have to wear on this stuff. And, then you and I would be, the cool ones there. All right. Gena, how about you? Tell us a bit about yourself and some of the work that you do here at AWS, and how did you get involved in doing that?
Yeah. Well, I started playing games from a very young age. And I think I kind of grew up when MySpace was taking off. So that was like my middle school era. And I didn't even know what I was doing, but I was like messing around with some of the HTML and the code, trying to like make my MySpace profile as pretty as it could be. And at the time, I didn't know that that was like coding and computer science, right? And so I feel like I ended up getting where I am today by a combination of like, yeah, I studied, I worked hard, I went to college, but also a little bit of luck, because I feel like when I look at my middle school and my high school, and the classes I took then, and, I think that there was really kind of a lack of role models for me. I didn't know that computer science was a field. I didn't know game development was a thing when I was in high school. I remember like looking at the college that I got into and trying to think like, what the heck do I major in? And I was like, well, I like computers, I guess, like I remember coding in MySpace. I like that. And I kind of just picked computer engineering. And then through that, like, thankfully I picked computer engineering, because then I discovered, oh, what I actually want to do is computer science. Oh, what I actually want to do is a subset of kind of computer science and talking about like the cloud and cloud technology and cloud architecture, which is something, again, that I had no idea was even possible or a thing that like women did. So AWS was my first job out of college. I wasn't directly working with games customers right out of the gate. I went through a similar training program that Olivia mentioned. It's called Tech U. And it was really fun. And I learned so much. And I started networking. And, I've been working in the games vertical. Again, when a spot opened up, I was like, this is what I want to do. Started working on projects in my own time too, kind of like building my portfolio. And now I work with large scale game customers, which is really fun. And also, if you like want to learn more about like what working with games customers kind of at an unprecedented scale looks like, we actually did a recording, Boss Levels, I think episode 5, where we kind of talked through like what some of that looks like when you want to do a game launch at a very large scale. So that's kind of the stuff that I do day to day now, which is really fun. And I feel really lucky and grateful. And I love it.
Well, we are lucky and grateful to have both of you here at AWS, and of course, the industry having Careen. I mean, again, Careen was instrumental in helping me get connected to one of my heroes way back in the day. You realize that was 12 years ago now. It was Hideo Kojima. So that's another story for another time. So I'm thrilled that again, we have you working here at AWS, and that, Careen, you continue to make such a profound impact on the industry. And I think we probably want to, pivot to talk a bit about some of the work, Careen, that you've been doing around with organizations like the Women's in Games International Group. And what has your experience been in working with organizations like Women in Games International, as well as other organizations that provide charity and outreach and growth for the industry?
Sure. So the very first year I joined the industry, there's an organization called the Entertainment Software Association Foundation, and they put on a charitable event every year called Night to Unite. And so I got voluntold that I was going to be part of the auction committee. And it was kind of a good way to start kind of learning a little bit about what the industry does to give back. This was way back in the day, before there were DEI programs and before there were charitable programs at each company, which actually is a thing now, where everybody is actually trying to make a concerted effort to make the world a better place, or the industry a better place. But I worked on the auction committee. I got an invite to attend Night to Unite. I went, and I was like, this is an amazing event. We're all getting together to change the lives. And at the time, we were donating. The organization helped Sandra Day O'Connor launch her iCivics video game. They also helped launch a video game that helped kids who were fighting cancer kind of like play through fighting cancer via a video game. Online safety is something that they were supporting. So really great things. Now they have scholarships, and they're really focused on their scholarship programs. But it started at a very early time in my career. And then from that, I think I just kind of naturally kind of started to volunteer with other organizations, whether it was licensing organizations or the Licensing Industry Merchandisers Association. I joined their board and kind of helped that organization. And most recently, with working with the new Women in Games International Board. This is an organization that's been around for 20 years. It started with this amazing, talented group of women who were on panels talking about how they made a difference. And then they're like, wait a second, maybe we should actually organize something. And so they did. It's the 20th anniversary next year. And with Women in Games International, the programs that we have are all free. We have mentorship programs. We have Level Up podcast. We have a program called Get in the Game, where if you are, either a student or you are a junior level person within the games industry where you want to go to a trade show, but nobody can pay for it. So you can sign up and get selected to become part of a cohort. You get sent to things like GDC or Gamescom, where you have a week, you get the passes, you get the hotel rooms, the ability to have networking mentorship breakfast every morning, kind of advice on, how to build LinkedIn profile, why that's important, different training sessions. You get to have tours of locations like the PlayStation office in San Mateo or the Xbox booth at Paris Games Week, and get to meet with all of these leaders to learn and network. I think the rate of people who go through this program get offered a job is like over 80%. So it's a pretty good, successful program that we have. It's an amazing thing that we are lucky enough to get sponsors for. So, there's so many things that you could do to volunteer within the industry. It's so easy to get involved. It's not just Women in Games International and the ESA Foundation, but the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences has a foundation where they have a scholarship program and mentorship program. You have Women in Games in Europe, Women in Games Jobs. They have ambassadorship programs. They have an annual event they put on every year. Yuki in the UK has a whole host of programs for people trying to get in the industry. BAFTA has their organization. We have Gay Gaming Professionals, we have Latinx in Gaming. We have so many organizations that are ready, willing, and able to find people that are very interested in volunteering and building their network and providing, actually trying to, provide assistance to everybody that's in games.
Careen, a quick question. So Olivia and I do some Women in Games stuff internally at Amazon, but I know for me, I really want to get involved in Women in Games International, but I don't know how. Is there maybe like some links or resources? I'm sure we could probably throw in the bio of like this YouTube video, but do you have a starting place that you recommend for people like me?
It's WIGI.com. And you can go on the website and you can either donate, you can sign up to volunteer, you can sign up for the newsletter, which, by the way, has one of the best jobs boards that you can access in the games industry. We are actually putting together an advisory council for Women in Games International, where we want to have our first ever summit called Creating Immediate Impact at GDC next year, where it's going to be invite only if you're on the advisory council, which, by the way, every level of experience, every gender, just everybody joining to come together to talk about what you do in your day-to-day lives, either personally or professionally. Everybody comes together, brings these ideas. We talk about them. Everybody leaves with a new idea that they implement in their lives, change the life of one person, hopefully with the goal of changing hundreds of lives a year. And by the time we're done, we'll have changed thousands of lives in the industry. So go to GetWiki. .com and sign up now and be a part of this movement. So it's really easy to do that. And then I would, we could put all the other names and organization websites.
We'll have them in the show notes and the links.
Sure that happens and have all those links. But again, there are so many organizations that are ready, willing, and able to have people participate as mentors, as mentees, anything, volunteers for networking events. There's so much that can be done.
Yeah, and perhaps there's an opportunity to go ahead and bring some of those resources into the company here, right? And start sharing them across the organization, and even look at doing additional work with them for, the groups that we have inside of AWS. And we have a ton of them, a ton of affinity groups, a ton of hobbyist groups. I mean, Slack, it's always popping up with yet another, channel, right, to go after. So, I think those resources would be awesome to figure out how we go ahead and bring, again, that knowledge, that exposure to these incredible organizations, right, into the company, and kind of continue to help shape the openness of access to technology, to roles in the industry, to roles in games, and beyond that.
You have an amazing person on your team, Diane Williams, who works with Women in Games International. So she hosts an event at GDC and at Gamescom every year where they have it's a networking event. You can register and sign up, and you can, again, have this panel, learn from this panel of women in the industry of what's happening, and be able to have that networking across the group. It's pretty cool.
You know what actually is funny is Diane is also coordinating our Women in Games mixer at Unreal Fest, which is coming up if you're watching this video in 2024. It's going to be September 30th. So if you're a woman in games, or if you're one of our male allies, or if you're somebody who is looking to get into the games industry, it would be a great event to come network too. So.
Yeah, and Diane is absolutely fantastic. Again, not just a wonderful colleague, just a wonderful friend, and really an incredible voice, right, within the industry too. And she's constantly leaning in to help elevate these, these events, and to put these on, and to continue to drive that recognition and the visibility, right, of voices for people that want to be in the industry that may, feel like they have a difficult time getting in, or feel that there are these, these kind of unspoken roadblocks to getting in. One of the things that we discussed before starting recording here is, we look broadly at kind of the way the games industry has been shaped. And once again, it's not just the games industry, but the way, kind of the tech industries have been shaped. Sometimes, there aren't these very clear paths, or these assumptions that are built in to getting involved, right? To being able to jump in. Can you all share maybe a story about an assumption that you had that you thought may have prevented you from doing work that you wanted to do, but actually it turned out to not be true, or you found a way around that? Can you talk a bit about some of your experiences? Again, maybe it was, I don't think this is a door that's open to me. Oh no, actually it really is open to me. I just needed to go find a different door to walk through, right, to get there.
Yeah, I can start with a story. This was a few years ago when I was, like I mentioned in my intro, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do beyond being a technical curriculum developer. And I had heard of solutions architects, but at the time I had no idea what they did. But for some reason, I had this idea in my mind that they were very scary and intimidating, and very technically qualified. And I think that's part of why I was scared and intimidated of them. And that because of that first bullet point, I would never have what it would take to be one. So it's funny how sometimes stars align, because while I was in my previous position, I was involved with this pilot program that we had for training and certification. And through that program, I got connected with someone who is a senior solutions architect. Her name's Sonia. And she said to me afterwards, she said, "Hey, Olivia, if you ever need a mentor, I'm happy to mentor you." And I thought, yeah, this would be great. And through working with her, there were many things that came out of that mentorship relationship. One was, in addition to the research that I started doing on my own to see what it was that solutions architects actually did. Like, I watched YouTube videos, I read articles and blog posts, things like that. I then would meet with Sonia and ask her, well, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm thinking. Can you tell me how this compares to your day-to-day reality? She also got me in contact with a few other solutions architects who were colleagues of hers, as well as some solutions architect managers. Not to say I was at the point of saying, "Hey, please hire me," but just to ask them questions about what do you do in this position? What are some of the things you enjoy most about it? What don't you like about this role? And for me, one of the big realizations and where I saw that I was wrong was that previously I thought that solutions architects had to know everything. And I will say, speaking as a current solutions architect, I do not know everything. I know a lot of things. I also know how to find the information that I don't currently know. And but I don't know everything, and that's okay. I'm very comfortable in admitting that right now. And I also realized that being able to be someone who has good communication skills is such an important part of being a solutions architect. And as the time progressed, I started to see a lot of parallels between the skills that I acquired from being a public schools teacher, specifically a middle school teacher, and the way that I work with my customers now. There's a lot of empathy that comes with that. And so the big takeaway here that I have is when I was looking at what this position entailed, I was very misinformed when it came to the technical parts of it. But the other thing is that I was completely neglecting the non-technical side of that role, the human side of that. And I think that a big piece of advice I would give to anyone who's considering a career or a role switch would be try to step outside mentally step outside of the work that you're doing and look at it from an external perspective, because chances are there's so many amazing things that you're doing that are transferable to other positions and fields that you want to enter. But it's very, very easy when you are working in this role in your day to day, it's very easy to not see those things yourself. So don't sell yourself short. That's really hard to say. And also don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Excellent. Gena, how about you?
An assumption that I thought was actually wrong when I
it was set in stone and turned out that really isn't the case.
I would say for me, probably the biggest one is that women don't play games, or they're bad at games, or maybe they only like main support roles or something like that, right? When in reality, that is not true. I know some people probably across the world still like maintain that position. And they think that like girls maybe aren't good at games. Again, not that you need to be good at games to work in the games industry, but I think that being here and being on my current team, I have realized that it is very inclusive. I know that might not be everyone's experience in the games industry. I know that it definitely isn't, but my current team that I work in right now, we have a core tenet that is games are for everyone, everywhere, no matter what. And I think that was really eye-opening to me. And I think that it is really great to work with people who believe in you and support you. So I think that was my biggest wrong assumption. So
excellent share. Careen, how about you?
I'm going to go back to your point about how your career path is not a straight line. So when I was at THQ, when I was learning from all of these amazing team members, and by the way, half of our executive team were these amazing, strong women that I absolutely love and adore. I was doing work that I loved, but there wasn't really a growth path for me from that. And so I had to leave to get to where I wanted to go. And so there is a phrase that is actually the title of Ina Garten's new book about herself, bigger new biography called Be Ready When the Luck Happens. And so when I was at THQ, a colleague of mine, Yoshi Takanaka, was going to basically help a company called D3 Publisher open up their Western division and try to build their business in the West. It was a top 10 Japanese publisher. It was Japanese value publisher. And it was the middle of a console transition. And this was kind of taking on a value publisher and trying to build a portfolio that would be successful in the West. I was the second person that Yoshi hired. A very good friend of mine, John Ardell, thought we were crazy. He's like, this is never going to work. Why would you leave THQ and do this? And I did it. And I went from being a senior manager to a vice president. So that's one of the ways that you get, but going from a big company down to a smaller organization. So that's one of the ways you can grow your career path. but worked with an amazing team and worked very, very hard. Was very nervous. I'm like, how am I going to do this on my own? Like, how am I going to be in charge of the department? But we would go to trade shows and we would start with meetings at breakfast and go all the way through dinner till the after dinner meetings. My friends at Cartoon Network, you're crazy for having a meeting before 10 a.m. Yoji, who hired me, went on one trip with us. He's like, I'm not doing that anymore. That's too exhausting. I had dinner with Ian Baverstock at Game Connection in Lyon. He's like, you and Brian are the only people that really work the whole time you go to a trade show. But it paid off because within about 2 years, we went from zero revenue in the West to about $140 million within the time of a console transition. A couple of the titles behind here are responsible for it, Ben 10 and Flushed Away, but also Puzzle Quest, my favorite.
I love one of my top 10 games. I love Puzzle Quest so much. Oh my goodness.
I
best match 3.
2 Penny Arcade comics based upon Puzzle Quest. I'm so excited. But anyways, so that's the thing is really be ready when the luck has happened. Be open to any opportunities. Sometimes smaller companies offer bigger, more responsibility and bigger jobs. So you may take a step down, but learn a lot more. So that's the thing. It's never a straight line. You never think so. And even when I got to the point where I was at Konami and I worked with you, Chris, or my team worked with you on the Art of the Video Games exhibit. And we also had like Silent Hill, Halloween Horror Nights Maze. We're doing such cool stuff. But I realized at the time, it was the last time the market was a little bit of a mess, that the role that I was in was going to go away. And so I had to be like, what am I going to do in the future? Do I stay in licensing? Do I stay in games? And I was like, if I'm going to stay in games, I want to be on the forefront of technology. And so jumped straight into PlayStation Now and Gaikai. And so again, just try to be ready when the luck happens and be a little fearless.
I love that. Be ready when the luck happens. Yeah, and that is such an important point, right? That, you hear not just in the topic of conversation we're having right now, but you hear, oh, well, this person got there because, they knew this person. That's why they're there. Look, nobody gets anywhere in life without help. Nobody. And I always say there is no Jobs without Woz. There isn't. Like Steve Jobs couldn't write code, right, to save his life. Steve Wozniak, had he not built the things he built, there would be no Apple the way it shaped up, right? Or if it did, it would have looked very different. And so, yes, people around you can help you to move into different areas, to open the door, to get you that chance. And don't be embarrassed about taking the chance, about asking for those things. But you stay in the room because you know what you're doing. You stay in the room because you prove that you can do the job, right? Or you leave the room because now you've already proven that you can be the boss of everybody else in the room. So that's why you get out of there. But that's really important. And it leads me to, a thought that I have is, what can we all do to be better allies to each other, to make sure that voices that don't feel they can be heard in the room or don't think an opportunity is open to them, how do we go and help our colleagues that want to be in this space, desperately want to work in video games or anywhere for that matter? How can, what are the things that we can do, all of us, to be better allies to each other?
So what I do is try to take a look at what I do in my own role. And so take a look at how you are in meetings and email threads and workload and groups, making sure that when people are speaking, that if you notice that somebody has added their input, kind of give them the opportunity and just invite them into the conversation. Just do everything that you can to be more inclusive, just overall to everyone. Another thing that I like is be the leader you want to have. I think all of us have worked for leaders that we absolutely adore, and all of us have worked for leaders that maybe we don't. So you can be a leader even if you don't have direct reports. It's about your action and your approach to things, your approach to issues and problems and your attitude. How can all of that can have a positive impact on the overall group and the overall team. So be the leader that you would want to have. Use reviews as a force for good. Get positive, unsolicited feedback. I used to do that at Google all the time because sometimes, the review process is very standardized and, people, might just have a certain way of giving reviews. But if they're getting a lot of people giving feedback that somebody's doing an amazing job, it might kind of change the mind of the leadership team, or say, hey, wait a second, maybe we should pay more attention to this person that happens to be performing really, really well. Another thing, and I'm sorry if I'm hogging the whole conversation right now, is build a plan on what you would do if something happens or something goes wrong. And so that's something that I didn't have planned. And there have been a couple of times where I didn't know how to react to something because I had not had a plan of what if this happens? What if I see something? What if something happens to me? How do I address that? And in making those plans, remember that people should be encouraged to grow and change. So if somebody's talking over somebody in a meeting and you're constantly, Chris has a good story about this, and you're constantly trying to bring the expert into the room and make sure that people know who's really should be answering the question versus just, asking whoever they feel comfortable asking, then it's an opportunity to help people grow and to change. Leadership, of course, should deal with bad actors, and so they need to be aware of things like that. But for a majority of the people in this industry, people need to be open and willing to bring people along to grow and to change. And then, of course, volunteer. What we talked about that already.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all really good strategies. And I'd like to add on to that a bit, especially as it relates to the topic of how to encourage more participation during meetings, for example. So another perspective I want to bring up on this would be like, let's say, what we're talking about. If you notice that there's someone on a team who hasn't spoken up in the meeting, often the advice that would be given for an ally would be to say, oh, hey, so-and-so, what do you think about that? And for some people, that can be a really good way to bring them into the conversation. But I just want to put out there another alternative, which is that for other people, it might cause them to shut down a little bit more. Because I know for myself, personally, I'm someone who needs a little bit more thinking time to think, to process, to really bring my ideas together. And so for this, I would recommend when you're someone who's planning a meeting, if you're responsible for that meeting, please make sure that you have some agenda that's clearly set. Because when I go into a meeting and I know what the actual agenda is, that gets me thinking of, okay, so we're probably going to talk about this, this, and that. Let me figure out what my thoughts are on that. Another thing that helps, say, in a team meeting context is to have certain norms around the questions that people will be expected to respond to. So, for example, whenever my team meets, we are given the options to talk about what's something cool and interesting that you've been working on, or what's something fun that one of your customers has done, what's something that you need help with, what's something new that you've learned. And so for me, again, thinking about how I need some more time to really process what I'm thinking of, having those questions laid out in advance for me helps me so much. And it makes it so that for accessibility purposes, that's another way to ensure that you're really doing all that you can to bring people into the conversation.
And for me, I really like how, Careen, you mentioned that it's important for people to grow and change and learn. And I want to emphasize that because nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes before. Everyone is going to make mistakes. That is just life. But I think that it's really important to be open and empathetic and have humility and understand, what could I be doing better as a person? And sometimes it's hard to grow and learn and change if you don't know what you're doing is wrong. And so a lot of times people can have these unconscious biases or maybe sometimes microaggressions that make other people in the industry or in life just feel uncomfortable or unwelcome. And so I think that what you can do in that scenario is if you see something, say something, speak up about it, right? Because maybe people don't know that how they're saying something is hurtful, and hopefully they are open to learning and changing, but they're not going to know unless you speak up and you confront them, right? So it gives them something to think about. I've been in multiple situations myself where I know ideally I want to have a voice and I'm working on it, but sometimes it's hard to have a voice. And I'm sure other people feel this way. And so sometimes it's been really helpful for me in those uncomfortable situations when I have an ally with me, somebody who like loves and cares for me and supports me, who can speak up for me and make that confrontation, even if it's a little uncomfortable, to try to educate people that like what they're doing isn't nice. It's not nice. It's not fair. It's not welcoming or supportive. So I'd say if you see something, say something, and have humility and be open to learning and growing.
I mean, just awesome answers all. And Gena, you have me thinking, a phrase that I kind of came up with, when my kids were younger and stuff. It was like, listen, I have two basically rules, right? Which is one, try to help as many, hurt as few. Like, that's it. Like, if you live your life that way, you will have a great life. You'll meet awesome people. You'll get to do awesome work. Just try to be helpful. Try not to hurt people is number one. The second one is don't listen to the words, listen to what people are saying. Because sometimes those thoughts manifest themselves in an unhealthy way because people either think they can punch down, that you happen to be the person that's directly in their line of sight. It's like, what is actually the root cause of that type of behavior? What's driving that? So I got all the words, but there's something else going on here. It doesn't excuse the behavior. And yes, you need to make sure that allies are around you that are going to say, that is not only not appropriate, but what is it that you're really upset about? Because clearly it's not our colleague, type of thing. And so, yeah, it's to make sure, and I'll just step up to say that as an ally, that's, part of your responsibility of being just a good world citizen, right? Just trying to help people along. And Careen, you said you have to bring people along. I firmly believe this, right? That if you're part of a team, everybody gets the credit if you worked on it. If you're part of the team, then you stand up for your team. I don't care where they are, right? In the structure of the organization. Like, that is what great leadership is about. And as Careen said before, you don't need to be at the top of the chain to exhibit that leadership. Just help as many, hurt as few, and listen to what people are saying, not just the words. I think that is probably as good a place as any to go ahead and wrap up this episode. Incredible advice, incredible thought-provoking conversation here today. I want to thank our three guests today, Gena, Olivia, and our special guest, Careen, for joining us on this very special episode of Boss Level, discussing women in the video game industry. All of the links to the sites that we mentioned will be included in the show notes below. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So I want to thank you for spending your time with us here on Boss Level. It's, the podcast we try to demystify and simplify the technology, services, and solutions that we at AWS bring to you. And of course, how we can make the industry better for everybody that wants to be part of it. So thanks again to my wonderful guests, and we'll see you next time on Boss Level.